You and your colleagues have looked at what's been dubbed a science gap. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
There's been, at this point, quite a few longitudinal studies in which children are followed across time to understand their development, particularly in reading and also sometimes in math. But very few studies have been done to try and understand children's overtime development in understanding science. And so we analyzed a nationally representative sample that was followed across time from kindergarten entry to the end of elementary school. And the aim of the study was threefold. It was, one, to understand how early gaps between groups start to develop in terms of science achievement, how stable those gaps are across time, and then factors that would seem to explain while some kids were doing better and some kids were doing worse in science, and so how we might help those who were struggling more in terms of understanding science.
What did you and your colleagues find? Where were the gaps?
The gaps start quite early. So there are gaps in relative understanding about the natural and social world by kindergarten entry. The early onset of those gaps explain later gaps, so the gaps are stable across time. And then there are a relatively small number of factors that are malleable that could be targeted, that if targeted would help reduce the gaps. And those factors include economic disadvantage, as well as the propensities and skill sets children bring to the start of kindergarten, including their early understanding of the natural and social world, as well as the reading and math achievement and their behavior.
You talk about economic disadvantage. That's one of those factors that people may not be able to change?
Well, I think it depends on who we're talking about in terms of people. There's a great deal of poverty in the country. There's a great deal of economic disadvantage that we could be targeting through federal economic policy to help alleviate some of the want that children are developing under.
The other two or three factors, these are areas where there's a way to work in and intervene?
That's right. Some of these factors are more valuable through economic policy. Others are more malleable through educational policy. So teaching children early scientific knowledge, teaching them how to be skilled mathematically and to be good emergent readers are under the school system's purview, as well as helping children learn how to self-regulate their behavior.
You had mentioned that you and your colleagues found that there's a low amount or a lack of knowledge in, was it natural science or how the world works? Can you explain that?
In this particular data set, the assessments for scientific knowledge include questions about the natural world, the physical world, life sciences, Earth and space systems, but also questions about the social world. So how society's organized, how things work that are naturally occurring in children's environment. So, you know, what a fire truck is, what it does would be a kind of question that would be assessed on here, as well as questions about the moon or weather and erosion and things of that nature. So it's a comprehensive assessment that cuts across questions relating to the natural sciences as well as more the social sciences. And really it's designed to help understand how children are observing and thinking about their contexts.
What can parents do?
I think there's been a lot of important public health messaging around the need to make sure that parents are engaging in early literacy activities, storybook reading, helping to develop children's early acquisition of vocabulary and background knowledge, these types of things that relate, it would seem, more about literacy. And that's important, and I think that has helped children come to school better equipped to benefit from the more formal reading instruction they might be provided in their classrooms. But there's a lot that parents could do to help support children's early acquisition of science and math knowledge. And I can describe some activities, but it's important for parents to understand that these gaps emerge early in reading as well as in math and science. And so trying to help children early on to acquire capacity and understanding about math and science as well about reading is important. The gaps that emerge early tend to predict and beget gaps that are evident later. And so what can parents do? Parents can make science and math learning important, just in the same way they try and make reading important. Parents don't have to have all the answers. Some of this, we can tap our own anxieties in terms of understanding some of these things. But making science and math important, modeling interest and curiosity, engaging in science-like thinking around observation and hypothesis and experimentation, being willing to be a learner yourself, and just making it important, I think can go a long way to helping equip children to be learners about math and science, to be interested in it, to benefit from the instruction that are being provided, and hopefully develop a curiosity around math and science that serves them well as they age.
You had mentioned the anxiety, parents with math and science anxiety.
Right.
How do you get the conversation started then, and how young is too young?
Well, I would encourage parents to not be prescriptive, didactic, lecturing or telling children. I would instead encourage them to model what you want children to be themselves. And so if you model curiosity and interest about topics around math and science, try and, when opportunities come up about numbers, about what's going on in the world, asking kids questions about it, or trying to extend what they already know. Engage in these activities yourself. Get down on the carpet or on the floor and work with them and building ramps or doing something with water or things of this nature, and just making it interesting and fun is enough, I think, in a lot of ways. Help children remain curious about these topics, math and science.
How do you do that? Is there a way to get them to think by questioning, and can you give me some examples?
Sure. There's lots of things that will come up in, say, storybook reading, or as you're driving around your town or neighborhood, or when you're at the library. Any time that you can try and emphasize information around science or math and ask questions about it and help children have a bit better understanding than they did before the interaction started, that's all beneficial. So when you're picking up books at the library, trying to pick up books that are around topics that involve math and science. Picking up books about the solar system as much as you pick up books about, whatever it might be, knights and castles and whatever it might be. When you're going about the house and you're cooking, involving children in helping go through the recipe and understanding measurement and a sequence of ingredients that they follow, and what happens and why it's happened. Why is the egg looking different as I put it into the pan under heat than when it started? Why is putting the mix in the oven and exposing it to heat, what is it doing, and why are we doing that? When you're driving around town and you see a construction site, what are they doing? What are those machines? What purpose do they serve? Why are they digging in the ground? What's the purpose of that? You don't have to have all the answers, but if you ask the questions and then go through the process of learning yourself, and you're modeling curiosity and interest, that is helpful. I think it makes it interesting to children. It gets them to think more mathematically or scientifically, and all you're trying to do is build on their knowledge base.